by saying he does not fulfill his own word. This is the rest of God that it speaks of in Hebrews 4. My own testimony proves this. I am the least of men, yet he is mighty in me, because he is, and I simply dare to say it. If I don't make him, and I don't make him mighty by my faith, but only to acknowledge the truth that he is mighty, and he's mighty in me. Because wherever he is, he's mighty. So why not say he's mighty in me? Now my mind gets distracted just like anybody else's, but that is as it should be. We have to have the distractions and pulls of the world, which act as a springboard for our faith, to be expressed in the face of opposites. What things soever you desire when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you shall have them. Have received, not one day will. Have already. At the moment of prayer, we have gotten our answer. It may be a while before it shows up in the flesh. That is not our business. Our business is to give thanks, because he has done it. This is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. That's the key to this faith life, to accept God's promise in us as true now, not as some never-seen imaginary future. Abram obeyed the Lord and changed his name to Abraham, father of many nations, when he did not yet have a true heir, and he and his wife Sarah were past the age of childbearing. That is faith, to say it is so before the eyes see and the ears hear. Believe. That's that. And here's another question someone sent me. Now this is about other philosophies besides Christianity and Jesus. I read something of yours on the internet, and you spoke a lot about oneness. This reminds me of other teachings which talk about oneness and say we are gods, and makes me uncomfortable. Can you clarify this for me? I answer, you'll find the cross to be at the center of everything. If there is no cross, there's no life. And that's the trouble with some of these other things going around. Not that some of it is not conceptually true, because many of the concepts are. But there's no cross, and the cross comes with Christ. There is no true death to self and resurrection unto God. To some, the self is God, when of course we know the human self is not God. It is a fallen created entity, initially made to be the image of God, but by having been deceived, we lost that first image, and are now only a shadow of what we were originally intended to be. God has brought restoration to us, but the deception is still there, still deceiving the whole world that we are independent, self-relying selves, which is a denial that we are fallen, that we have all bitten off the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. As the tempter promised us, we believe ourselves wise as God. In the deception of finding one's own falsely independent self as divine in itself, one is unwittingly worshiping the deceiver, the devil, who masquerades as ourselves in independence in a very hidden and subtle way. As Paul said, Satan was an angel of light, so it's no great surprise that his servants masquerade as servants of righteousness and peace and love. But only God is God. We must realize thoroughly before we can come to the truth that we are not God, before we are ever safe to know Him in us as one with us. This must come about only through a revelation of the Spirit. And only Jesus Christ, through the cross, can perform what none of us in ourselves can ever perform, reconcile us to God, by kicking the deceiver out of the inner center of our lives and filling us with His Spirit. Because Jesus is God the Word, tabernacled in human flesh, like us in every respect, yet filled with the life that came down from heaven, which none of us are until we are born again. Then we also participate in the life which came down from heaven, but not before. Let us not get confused. There is a very liberating truth in seeing through to God in all things. But as I said in the beginning, It can only be through the cross of Jesus Christ. Otherwise, it is self-effort, a man, or I'll say a devil-inspired philosophy, very, very subtly close to the truth, but without the life of the truth, and therefore it becomes a lie. Sometimes these things are couched in beautiful words. They sound wonderful, talking about peace and harmony, righteousness, talking about love. We should, all the same things we say. And I'm sure that many of these people are very well-meaning and very well-intentioned. It was part of my path to get to Christ. I was very well-meaning and well-intentioned as far as I knew. I didn't know I had a big old bug inside me that really made me, in the long run, ultimately, still only about myself. I mean, it was really a search for my own salvation, my own enlightenment, and things like that. I did not have the cross in the center, and the cross of Christ is what changes everything. It's that death and resurrection that occurs through the cross, where sin is removed from our lives. The God of sin, who is sin, that's what it is. Sin is not just sort of a principle. It's a person. Just like righteousness and holiness and true love is a person, in the person of God in Christ. Well, sin also is a person. It's Lucifer, Satan. That's not popular to say. People don't like to hear that. They want it, at least to be, if there is such a thing as sin, it's just either acts that you do, or it's some kind of principle. Well, there's no such thing as just a principle. Where would a principle be? Everything comes out of person. God as person is the creator of all things. And then everything, every creature in the universe, it says in Acts 17:28, we all live and move and have our being in God. God encompasses all things. He's all in all. And there's nothing in which he isn't. Now, in evil and in darkness, the evil does not perceive him. It has no sense of God. It has no sense of love, life, and joy, because it's turned away from God. But it's still contained in the being of God. That may be hard to understand, but there's nowhere where God isn't. If we believe he's everywhere, he's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, all those things that we say about God. But it's the life of it's the cross of Christ which is eternal. It didn't just happen 2,000 years ago in Palestine. This is something that's happened in the eternities. It says in Revelation that he's the Lamb slain before the foundation of the earth, who sits in the midst of the throne. In the midst of the throne, or the center or heart of God, the place where the power of God resides, sits a Lamb slain. Well, there's several things being talked about there. One is that the cross, or the death and resurrection of the Lamb, is the greatest power in the universe. It's sitting in the throne of power. And also that the power is symbolized by a little helpless lamb that can't do anything to anyone. And God's, instead of a mighty chieftain with, like the Transformers, with mighty weapons and tanks and armies and things like that, the center of the power of the universe is a little helpless lamb. And this is the center of our lives, a little helpless lamb who gave his life, and by that giving of his life was raised again and brought reconciliation into us, kicked out the old, brought in the new, and made us whole again. And that's where righteousness and holiness really come from. Well, that's it. Thank you.